But let's fast forward a little bit and talk about the place where you, Marita, and I actually physically met for the first time, which was smack in the middle of trying to bring these ideas into policy. It was the President's Crime Prevention Council in '95 with the Clinton administration, when the idea, which the seeds had been planted more than a decade ago when I was at the Children's Defense Fund, of why do we have all these different federal policies that are, picking at young people from different things, gang prevention, this, that, this, and all of them primarily negative about fixing kids. And how do you really expect communities to put this stuff together with any kind of an approach, asset-based youth development, whatever you call it? And then we got the wish. Somehow, as the '94 crime legislation sort of pushed through, this idea of an ouncer prevention council was stuck into it, and they needed somebody to run it. And the call came that said, you asked for it, you got it. I think that used to be the phrase, you asked for it, you got a Toyota. But you asked for it, you got it. And then we had to quickly pull a team together. And you were a part of that team. So when you think back to where we were a quarter of a century ago in that work, what do you think we've learned about what works, since that dropped you squarely into the middle of where we are now, trying to take all these federal programs and federal agencies and glue them together with a common understanding of what it takes to support youth development? What did we learn?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing and opportunity we have. So yeah, Milbury McLaughlin at Stanford was the matriarch of the triumvirate who introduced you to Marita and then introduced me to you and Marita back in the day. And I had come, as Marita had, with an education background, and Milbury opened it up for me and broadened the lens and pointed to the work that you, Karen, and Marita were doing. So their bumper sticker phrases: problem 3 is not fully prepared, academic competence, while critical is not enough, competence alone while critical is not enough. And that was just kind of it for me. And so I designed my own major at Stanford focused on that with those 3 principles in mind. So developed a major on youth development and policy. I always knew policy is where I was going to try to push through. If I'd known how hard it would be, maybe I would have picked something easier, but certainly we've done a lot and learned a lot. As I was prepping for this session today, I went back to reread a paper the 3 of us wrote very early in this work. It was in 1998. So it's just a little after the President's Crime Prevention Council, and you said it was handed to us, but I kind of think it was handed to us and then the rug yanked back out from under us very quickly. So we weren't able to actually do what we thought we were going to get the mandate to do. And I'll turn to that in a little bit. But yeah, so when I went back through that and was thinking about what we've learned in it. So a couple things kind of stood out to me. So one I'll say is hearing both me and Marita thinking about education is really exciting, that now we've come full circle and the organization is really digging into education in a way we haven't had an opportunity to do in the past. But what both Marita and I and others found that was working in education is the same stuff that was working in effective after school programs. And I think in terms of our sense that the types of environments that promote optimal development are where young people feel safe, where they feel they belong, and where they matter. The track record things that is we really got that right. After a while, the National Academy of Sciences came out with a report, Communities Programs to Promote Youth Development. That was in 2002. They really showed that, yep, those are the things that influence development. The forums Weichert Center then developed tools to test, are the after school programs that do those types of things well, do you actually learn better? And found to a remarkable ability that is absolutely correct. And now more recently, the National Academy of Sciences put out the promise of adolescence that went a step further and was actually able to explain in brain science why the heck this is the case. So that when you don't feel safe, you don't feel belong, you don't feel you matter, your body releases the stress hormone cortisol, which essentially shuts down the parts of the brain that you need that are focused on learning and memory, right? So Say don't drive while drunk. I think the new thing should be don't learn while scared.
Right.
You're literally learning impaired when you don't feel safe and you don't belong and that you don't matter. And we're part of the SOLD Alliance, the Science of Learning and Development Alliance is continuing to push forward on this. But in terms of were we right about the types of environments way back when, I would give us a pretty much an A+ on that it just keeps getting more and more validated, which has been great to see. In terms of then the goal, so the President's Crime Prevention Council, preventing crime, focused on a negative, right? That's where the youth development movement really dug in and said, our goal with working with young people shouldn't be the list of things we're trying to prevent them to do. Goal should be what we should help them to do. And generally people think what we should help them to do is academics. And we said, well, there's a lot more to development than that. So that too, I would say we've had a good track record. And I actually think even in policymaking circles, that really has shifted the norm of thinking. We've done a great job updating what readiness means over time. Great readiness, ready by design, the science of learning of youth readiness, compiled what the current of the state of the art was. The Forums Weichert Center has dug in deeper on social emotional skills. The Readiness Project is driving this forward. We've gotten buy-in at different times from different sectors. Partnership for 21st Century Skills really brought in a lot of the corporate sector. Karen was on the National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. So I do think that this notion of it's broader and we need to do a better job at being explicit about what success looks like. I also think we'd give us a very high marks on that one. And then the last one that I also give us high marks on is the notion that there isn't like one magic thing. There's no one magic trait that makes you resilient or not resilient. There's no one magic program that if all young people could get this program, then everyone would succeed. And really the sense that it's the preponderance of things. If you have lots of negative things in your environment, it's going to be very hard for you. If you have lots of positive things in your environment, it's going to go better for you. And so I think, Ian, if you put up the next slide, one of the core conclusions that we came to in the unfinished business is that the desired goals of overall youth development are difficult, if not impossible, to achieve within the bounds of a single intervention, unless that intervention is in reality not a single program or even a comprehensive one, but a reasonably complex strategy to change young people's environments and opportunity structures. So we wrote that unfinished business on a decade of promoting youth development 20 years ago. And I think if we now wrote further reflections on 3 decades of promoting youth development, I would imagine we would say pretty much the same thing in the same way. But I'm curious, Karen, if that also is what you would say, or you think we would change or amend how we think about this?
Yeah, no, I've had in this time that I now have, since I'm not CEO and haven't been for a couple of months, I really have sort of taken to going back and reading some of our older stuff, and I would agree with you 100%.